terms, religious terms. So in the first instance, what we've done here is we have unequal measures of analysis, because when we talk about Jews, we're talking about a race. When we're talking about Muslims, we're talking about a religious identity, right? So I actually wouldn't agree with that, because I would say that all Muslims in all the parts of the world don't have an equal right to live in Israel as the Palestinians do, because that's their. It's like saying, for example, that Bengalis have a right, as much a right to live in Palestine as Palestinians. I would say that doesn't register in my mind, right? Or vice versa.
So put it this way, the Jews that were living in Israel at the time, or living there, because to be honest, what's the moral ethic of people ruling the country that they're in? You could go back, if you look through history, all of us had it. If you look at, so conquering another land means that it's yours, because the Romans conquered it, the Christians conquered it, the Muslims conquered it. So I think because history dictates that we all had it, we all fought for it, then we all have equal right. That's my point.
Okay, so what's your premise? Is your premise a religious one, or is it a legal one?
No, legal.
So when you say legal, sorry guys, do you mind if I
He's
so if you're basing your analysis or your justification on legal grounds, may I ask, are you talking about the UN? Are you talking about international law? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about moral.
So okay, so it's not illegal.
Not legal, no, not practically in court. What's going to happen, because the UN, I don't hold the UN.
So what
the moral basis of the UN, I don't hold them either.
So you're not talking about the UN.
I'm talking about theoretically, morally,
okay,
what should be going on in Israel.
What moral philosophy are we referring back to? Are we going back to Judaism? Are we going back to Islam? Are we going back to liberalism? What are we going back to? Human rights?
In Judaism as well.
So Judaism, okay.
Let's speak in Islam as well, because not religiously. What?
Well, they're not all the same, so we have to kind of decide, right? Yeah.
So I think, as of now, from my point of view, Jews, Muslims, Christians all have an equal right to the land of Israel.
Listen, you've said that.
Right.
You've said that. What I'm saying to you is, before we continue this conversation, in order for us to get somewhere, we have to have a basis.
My basis is.
What is your basis?
My basis is that we had it during.
You had what?
My basis, the Jews.
Okay.
My ancestors.
Before you come to, we had it and they had it.
My ancestors.
And the Anglo-Saxons had Britain, and then the Normans came.
So there's another argument to be.
I'm just saying.
To be had here is when a person what's the justification for people in a country ruling it?
Sorry, I'm struggling to understand what your moral basis is. Is your moral basis a religious one or a secular one?
Let's talk about this. Let's say when the Christians conquered Israel, from whoever it was, did they have a right to govern it, or do we look at who had it before the Christians? When the Romans conquered Israel, did the Romans, because they managed to conquer it, have a right to rule Israel, or the people before that?
What are you talking about? Sorry, I'm not following, because. Are you talking about the expulsion of the Jews from Jerusalem?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that the Christians were not in charge of the Roman Empire at that time.
Nothing to do with Christians,
Romans. You said the Christians, so I'm just wondering.
There's different times in history, different eras.
Sorry?
Different eras in history.
But you're confusing all the facts right now.
No, I'm trying to. My point is, regarding the land of Israel, loads of people wanted to conquer it. Loads of people think conquer it. Loads of different ethnics.
Okay, but you can say that with every country in the world.
That's exactly. So let's start with every country in the world.
What is your
different countries have been conquered by different people.
What is your
conquering another country? Does that morally say that you're allowed to govern it?
Is that a question to me?
Yeah, let's talk about this and we'll talk about Israel.
Okay, that's a good question. Let me answer the question. Sorry, you're covering the thing. The question is, it depends upon the framework within which those countries were operating, and it depends upon the historical time period.
So, finish. Yeah.
So, for example, in the medieval period, where in international relations they call it the realist framework. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So, literally, where conquest was actually a legitimate way
legitimizing a
conquest was a legitimate way in which it was almost internationally recognized. Empire could expand. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That context is completely different to the post-1914 context, and even more different to the post-1945 context, which is after World War II.
Yes.
All of those contexts are different, and so if we're looking at the world and how it works, the geopolitics of a particular area, we cannot just abstract it. We have to look at the historical time period. Right. So looking at the Norman invasion, in 1066 is completely different to looking at the Iraq War in 2003.
100%.
So,
yes. Completely agree. We agree on that.
Right.
Yes,
So if that's the case now I'm asking the question: since we accept that the medieval time period, for example, and the post-World War I or post-World War II time period, there are different structures putting the world together, if you like.
Agreed, yes.
So does it follow in your logic that there are different rules concerning conquest as well?
Yes, completely agree.
Also,
if we don't, what you're basically saying is, as of now, morally we shouldn't look at history because history worked differently. During history, there were different ways in which countries conquered other countries. It was very capitalist, justifying kings who had power to conquer other countries. So now we shouldn't be looking at that. So then, when an empire conquered a country that had a moral right to rule it, whereas now it's not necessarily true.
What I'm saying is
that's what you're saying.
Kind of similar, but I would add to it a few caveats. Number one, for example, the United Nations. You had your right to be skeptical about it. I have my right to be skeptical about it as well because it's actually ruled by, in my view, the US. Really, the UN is an extension, it's an outgrowth of the UN. It's dominated by it, in my view, right? And disproportionately dominated by it, comparative to the other states which have military power, GDP, and population sizes, which ought to allow it to have proportional or
correct, agreed.
Right? So, for example, China and Russia and so on, they're disproportionately represented relative to all of those things I've just mentioned. However, with all of those problems with the UN and its attachments to the other organs like the WHO and the IMF Bank and all those things, all those problems, there is still something in the UN which is those who abide by it or claim to abide by it. In this case, the State of Israel, when it was in its inception, first of all, it came into being because of proposition in the United Nations. You accept that?
Yes.
And after 1948, the point is, they accept now Israel as a country. It says that they're part of the UN and they accept the international laws. Now, Iran, Iran or other countries that don't. By the way, I don't accept those countries as just countries or something, but another country that decides I'm not going to be part of the UN. Okay, we're not going to be part of the UN. Then morally, they're not constrained by the injunctions of the UN. They're not constrained by the laws. They're not constrained by the and so on. But Israel is because of its opting into the process and being part of the UN.
Right. Okay.
Now, so from that perspective, I'm saying there is an almost undisputed case to be made. That almost all of Israel's actions from May the 18th, 1948, when it was incepted, up until the present day, have been counter to the UN international law.
Right. So that's a very blanket statement.
For example,
I think it's more grey. It's not so black and white.
No, I think it is black and white.
That's you think.
No, I'll tell you why it is quite black.
By the way, I'm not a Zionist. I do not agree necessarily to the State of Israel. I'm not a Zionist. I don't know if you know that.
I don't know. Right, go ahead.
No, I don't necessarily agree to the inception of the State of Israel, that the Jews have a right to the country, that these people... And by the way, if you do... let me just follow on your point.
Yeah.
My point... You changed the point. My point at the beginning was that the Jews, if you look at it from a historic point of view, have a right to the land of Israel as well as Muslims.
But we've already said...
So if you want to follow upon the...
Is that your argument?
That's my argument.
Okay.
So you wanted to say that it depends on the era you're looking at. It depends about the rules of the countries in that era. Because things work differently in different eras. If you want to look at that, then... If you want to abide by history and work with the ethics that the countries worked in that era, then we know that the British owned Israel in 1948. Post 1948, it was governed by the British. Is that correct?
Not that I know of. In 1940,
it
wasn't part of the mandate. No, it wasn't part. No. That's not factual.
So what's factual?
As far as I know, 1948, the State of Israel was declared.
Who?
The UN.
So what
the
UN, but who owned it without the UN? Who governed Israel post 1948?
You mean pre?
Sorry, pre. Yeah.
Post means after.
Yeah. Sorry, pre.
Right. So no. Pre.
Rather pre. Yeah.
You had a mandate to govern. Britain had a mandate to govern Palestine.
Yes, because
and then in the 30s,
part of the British Empire, like they governed Australia,
Chamberlain wrote a white paper.
Yeah.
Chamberlain wrote a white paper, and it oscillated. There was an according to Hurwitz, You know, and the struggle for Palestine is an interesting book. You can read it, or Mansfield is an interesting introductory book. It's not whatever. I'm giving you.
Okay.
I'm giving you historical resources to do your own reading.
That could be.
There was an oscillation, and you can see with the white papers that was put forward, Neville Chamberlain,
right,
and so on. How much was going? So then they ultimately referred it to the UN. Now the point is this.
Okay, so that you're saying what you're saying is they ultimately referred Israel to the UN.
They had a vote in the UN.
Okay, so but we agree that the British government governed Israel before 1948.
Yeah,
they governed it.
It was just your articulation in the first instance, just a post, and that means
sorry, you read that out a mistake. The wrong word came out.
That's why I disagreed with you.
Okay, no problem. So we agree on that.
Yeah.
Now, if it went through the UN, and the UN decided that the land of Israel is going to go to the Jewish people.
The UN decided.
Yes, the UN. That's right.
Well, actually, if you're talking about history, then we do have to talk about the Balfour Declaration, because the discussion of why was there even a discussion about. I mean, you do understand, even before the Balfour Declaration, if you look at, for example, the communications between Chaim Weizmann,
right,
and British officials, you'll find that those letters, for example, from Weizmann and those officials, was saying like, why don't you go into Uganda? And this is actually written. You can go read this.
Yeah, okay, that could be true.
Why don't you?
Okay,
it's not,
I'm not arguing on
I've got the primary source materials if you want.
I'm not arguing on this.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not here to argue.
The question is.
Yeah, I'm not here to argue in history. Okay.
Well, we have to speak about something.
Okay.
Right.
I'm not arguing.
Otherwise, what we're here to do, right?
No, I'm here to say. Do you agree?
You're making a historical case, right?
No, I'm saying as of now, the Jewish people have a right to the land of Israel. Do you agree to that?
I'll tell you, there is an extent to which that is true. I accept
so
that.
We agree.
No, it's not completely agreement.
Okay.
Look, I'm saying that there is an extent to which that is true. Absolutely.
Okay,
Jewish
amazing.
people, and by the way, I haven't got any problem in saying that outright.
Okay,
that
cool.
Jewish,
So that's
Jewish
my
people,
point.
and here's my issue.
And I'm not coming to push Muslims.
If,
I think Muslims also do.
So Muslims are I would disagree with that. Muslims are 1.8 billion people of the world.
Okay, the Muslims.
And if they all had the right to go there, it would be overpopulated.
Okay,
right?
that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
But I think the Muslims that are living there, or the Muslims that
you mean the Palestinians?
The Palestinians,
right? Arabs. You can call them Arabs. Arab
100%,
Palestinians,
yes,
or whatever.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, no problem. Just for the sake of argument,
right.
what I'm saying to you is, what I find troubling, is the fact that in the first instance, the Jewish lobby, or you could say the Zionist movement, which you said you don't really agree with anyway.
I don't necessarily, yes.
Yeah, in all cases. But they were given the options by this other colonial administrator called the British Empire. Where do you want to go, really? And then the case was made by Chaim Weizmann and the other, Zionist propagators. They're going to go to Uganda. No, Uganda, they said, it's nothing to do with us. We don't want to go to that place. We want to go to a place where our people, right, historically were located, which is in this place called Israel, or this place called Palestine, but which we call, or are going to call Israel. Yeah. This is the history. And then after that, Arthur Balfour put forward the Balfour Declaration.
That wasn't all the Jewish people. There's been Jewish people living in Israel throughout history. We're talking about the main, most of the Jewish people.
Look, I'm not talking about demographics of that area